Hi everyone, I'm Suzanne Lively. Thank you for joining me. In today's video, I'm going to share with you some of our favorite secular curriculum as well as a not so favorite piece of curriculum. For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. We're a homeschooling family of 3. We're secular and eclectic, and we've been homeschooling our daughter since she started school. She is 8 years old in the 3rd grade. So we've been homeschooling for 4 years. I'm really excited by today's video because this is part of a collaboration with a group of secular homeschooling moms who are also going to share what their favorite secular curriculum is. So when you're finished this video, head down into the description, check out that playlist for other amazing pieces of secular curriculum. I personally can't wait to see what everybody else has chosen for their favorites. I also want to say a special thank you to our host, and that is Shauna at Making Everyday Magic. Definitely check out her channel. She has a lot of experience and wisdom to share about secular curriculum. And for an added bonus, she has a fantastic sense of humor. Before I jump in and share with you my curriculum picks, I want to tell you how I've approached this topic. Like I said, we have been homeschooling for 4 years. During that time, we have not used a huge amount of open and go curriculum. I mention that because every time I hear the word curriculum, I still picture textbooks. It's still what comes to mind first, and there's a lot of open and go curriculum that you can buy that gives you kind of like the A to Z and how to teach your child a certain subject throughout the year. We have been very limited in our use of that type of curriculum. What we have done is a huge amount of unit studies. I consider myself now to be like a queen of unit studies because I absolutely love taking a subject, doing the research, gathering all the material, teaching my daughter, and just, I've loved every minute of that. In light of what I just talked about, I have chosen to focus on 3 categories. I will be giving you specific examples of what you can use for these 3 categories, but I did want to let you know that's going to be my approach. Now, ironically, when we get to the part where I share my least favorite piece of secular curriculum, I do actually have an open and go curriculum that I can share with you that didn't work for our family. I'll share that at the end. Without further ado, here are the 3 categories. The first one is delightful, whimsical books, and the second one is poetry, and the third category is science. Another reason that I chose the word category is because for all 3 of these categories, what I'm going to share with you and what we've done is choose resources that really are cross-curriculum. And what I mean by that is I might have chosen a particular book for one of those categories like science, for example, but the resources that we used ended up covering multiple subjects. I'll give you a quick example so you know where I'm headed. In science, we did a penguin study and we ended up using Julie Bogart's Brave Writer program, which is a language arts. We did Mr. Popper's Penguins, and that was language arts, as well as we did geography, and many other subjects fell under that penguin study category. The first category that I mentioned was the whimsical books, the delightful books, and please bear with me. Don't run away. Say it's a bit woo-woo, because I think this is one of the most important topics I'm going to mention in this video. And what I am inviting you to do is to choose a book that excites you and your child or children and use it for 10 minutes a day. This is not something that we're doing in our home in a huge way in terms of time. And we are really mindful of this in this second half of the school season. Well, I am. And the reason is for 2022, I decided to focus on creating a more whimsical family life, home life, and homeschool life. Why it was so important in our homeschool is because I am also being more diligent in our day-to-day studies for the second half of this school year. And my daughter is not used to that. And what I mean by that is I'm being a bit more strict in terms of scheduling and the amount of work that she has to do. And I'm not allowing her to sidetrack me as she would love to do, even with the book I'm going to share with you that falls under this heading. Now, it's really important to me that we cover a few things for our core subjects like reading, for example, as well as math by the end of the school term. I have found that adding more fun also into our day and making that a priority has really helped with this transitional period. All right, the book I'm going to share with you that I chose, is a Simply Fantastic, An Introduction to Classical Music. And we absolutely fell in love with this book. And I am limiting this to 10 minutes. So we do 1 or 2 of these a day. My daughter would really like to do more. Now, the reason that I said, if you take anything from this video, let it be this. It's because I've heard so many homeschoolers talk about the fact that they really want to instill in their children a love of learning. And I am one of those parents. Now, the question is, how do you do that? So how do we take these ideas and these ideals that we have and put them into action in our homeschools every day? This is a way that I found to do that. And it can be very simple. In fact, I think it should be very simple and very short. And it's to find a book that you're both excited about. And I use the examples of books because you can get them from the library like we did for free, and it's easy. It's just an easy way to make that a priority in your homeschool daily. Now, here's a great book to start off. And my goodness, you don't have to like country music. You do not have to like or know anything about classical music to enjoy this book. I'll let you see inside. Oh. Okay, yeah, so that's our flag. We're like halfway through this book. And the layout of this book is amazing. The author has taken and curated a list of myths and legends, and she paired those with these beautiful illustrations and pieces of music that honestly are so much fun. My daughter said to me in the last couple of weeks that this is her favorite part of homeschool right now. I mean, need I say more? Of course I will, but I don't think I need to. Yeah, I absolutely love this. It fills us with joy and passion, and there's something really to look forward to in our homeschool each day. This is just one of the things, but this makes me want to put on a tutu, and we have danced around to this song and have a great tea party. Like, it's just very magical. This is one example. Now, if this doesn't work for you, this is not a brand new book. I think it's like 8 or 9 years old. It was at our public library. And if you don't know what book to choose, ask your kid to get involved. Ask your children. Making it an active search and goal and having them participate, that brings excitement to it as well. And they will be more than happy to help you with this search. Go to the library, get 10 or 20 books, go through them, spend a week or 2 choosing the book. It doesn't, make that part of the fun that you do every day. Now, one of the things that I also think is great about this particular book, if you see in the back, now it depends on where your interests lie. There's a timeline of composers and periods. Now, we did buy from Squilt Music at one point a little music program that talked about those periods for classical music. And I can't remember if we finished it or my daughter was too young. Regardless, I do not remember it. And a lot of things I find that aren't skill-based from a couple years ago, she doesn't remember either. So I'm going to build on this. And I love the idea of scaffolding. And I do this a lot in our homeschool. I plant seeds. We do a little bit of this. Then next year we can build off this. There's so many composers and different pieces of work referenced in here that I'm excited to look further into. And Vivian is as well, in terms of legends and mythologies and some ballets and different plays. We can use this as a reference for the next couple of years. Speaking of tea parties, I wanted to mention poetry. And the reason that I wanted to mention it is because it has had such an impact in a positive way in our homeschool. And it is, again, another easy way to bring that joy and that feeling of doing something special together in your homeschool. Now, I also have a reference for a very specific book, because if you find the topic overwhelming, or if you're like me, I didn't study poetry till I was in high school, and then because of the way that we picked it apart and everything, I actually didn't like it. I hated it. So it's been really fun to watch my daughter fall in love with poetry. To see her as open to a book of poetry as she is to any book of fiction. One doesn't necessarily seem any better than the other. It isn't odd, it's normal to her. And poetry is one of the first things we did when we started to even think about homeschooling. Before I made the final decision to homeschool Vivian, I went out and made contact with the local community. I wanted to make sure there was a homeschool community for us if we made that decision. And somebody mentioned Julie Bogart and Poetry Tea Time. And I started to do this with my daughter when she was 4. And I'm saying this because we started homeschooling before the pandemic, and we didn't always get positive reactions from people locally. And like you do now. Now it seems a little bit more normal, but it certainly wasn't before the pandemic. And people would ask my daughter how she liked homeschooling. And her immediate response with total joy was, "Oh, I love it. We do poetry tea time." Now, think about that sentence if you were not familiar with poetry tea time. They had no idea what she was saying. It was like she was speaking gibberish, and they had this confused look on their face. And usually it ended the conversation. And I was happy with that. I was happy to see how much joy she was taking and association she was taking from homeschooling, this joy right off the, to start. And it has grown from there. Another reason I wanted to mention it, I think, is to hold myself a bit accountable, because we've been doing it way less this year than any other year, and it's just so simple to do. I have quite a few books from this Child's Introduction series by Michael Driscoll, and it's illustrated by Meredith Hamilton, and I really love them. And I want to start doing this on Fridays. I don't know if we'll finish it at the end of the school year. I doubt it. But if we start it this year and finish it next year, I would be very happy. And this is the book and the piece of curriculum I would love to suggest to you and for you to check out. I know they do have this in our local library, and one of the reasons I like it is because it does come with a CD, so somebody else can read the poetry if you're not comfortable. And it also explains in a very accessible way what the different types of poetry are. And it starts with nursery rhymes, and it gets into lyrics and limericks and haikus. It's really colorful and playful. And I find it's a really great book to start from. And this is another message I have with this video, and it's to keep it simple. Choose one book. And I would say that for all these 3 categories that I'm going to talk to you about today, it's choose one book, and it can be the main book that you work from, that you always start from there each day that you're scheduled to do poetry, for example. You always start with this. Now, if you spin off and do other books or look into other poets, that's fantastic. But always have one key book that you can go back to that you make sure that you do. In the homeschool terms, we call it the spine. So choose a book for the spine. It just keeps everything simple. And if you only have a set amount of time, it enables you to make sure you get some of it done. And on those days where you're feeling overwhelmed or tired, you don't have to think. You just pick up the book. And I think it just helps to keep everything streamlined. Okay, quick note as well, if you don't like that poetry book that I showed you, there is also Kids Pick the Funniest Poems, poems that made kids laugh. And this is by Bruce Lansky. Well, it's selected by Bruce Lansky. Anyway, my daughter loves this. It's very funny. It's a great way to introduce your kids to poetry. The other one that is also great to introduce your kids to poetry is, of course, Shel Silverstein. And he has 3 different books that we have. So yeah, he's fantastic. The 3rd category I chose is science. I already mentioned what we did for our penguin study. The reason that I put it on this list is because my daughter absolutely loves science. And I love the fact that in the younger years in particular, there's a lot of flexibility with science. And I took full advantage of that flexibility. And I think science was on my mind for 2 reasons. One, I've chosen to do more interest-led studies and made it a priority this semester. And she chose penguin study, and it ended up being so much fun. She told me this week we were having, I was going to say coffee. She wasn't drinking coffee, but we were at a cafe for breakfast before I dropped her off. She's in drama camp this week. And she told me that 2 things. One, that she'd watched every documentary that we have access to in our home for animals, about animals. Now, that's Disney Plus. They do their own documentaries, and they also have National Geographic on their channel. And that's Netflix, Amazon Prime. And yeah, she informed me that she's watched them all, a lot of them more than once. That's amazing, right? That she loves them that much. So if you have any suggestions, definitely leave it down below. I do have access to Curiosity Stream. She also told me during that conversation that she thinks she wants to go to college and study science. And she clarified that it wasn't because she wanted to do experiments with all the cool purple liquid and all those sort of things. It was because she had a lot of things she wanted to learn and that she wanted to study. That made me feel good that she has that much curiosity. And in terms of, getting our kids to love learning, this is a way to do it, is interest led. And how do you implement that in your homeschool while still maintaining the core subjects? And that's been a learning process for myself. And I could certainly do a whole video on that because I'm still learning, but I have learned a lot. Now, I do want to mention, I did purchase a subscription this year to Generation Genius. I want to say that before I forget that. And absolutely love it. I highly recommend it. Unfortunately, that was not something I made a priority this year. And I'm hoping by mentioning that to you again, I'm a little more accountable because so far I'm just wasting our money. But every time we go on there, I think it's a fantastic resource. And it's so affordable. And she, of course, loves every minute of it. All right, I think I'm going off on too many tangents. What I really want to say about science is it gives you the opportunity to study whatever your kids' interests are, especially in the early years. Take full advantage of that. Again, I will suggest that you choose one book as the spine for your study. For example, in our penguin study that I already referenced, we had gotten many books out of the library. But in fact, many of them repeat the same information. So I learned from that study in particular to just choose one book. And that way I get less overwhelmed anyways. And we don't start repeating information, which children do not like. I don't like it, but she really didn't like it. Now we're doing a tree study, and I thought I would take the opportunity to share this book from DK. And this was going around the internet and Instagram, so you might already know about it. But if I was doing tree studies, which we now are, and I have quite a few amazing books, but I realized in looking at them, I could choose one of them as well. And this is a great one, The Magic and Mystery of Trees, written by Jen Green. So this is not only whimsical and delightful, it's absolutely, the illustrations are gorgeous, but there's tons of information in there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because there's many amazing books about trees. I just wanted to really, wanted to emphasize the fact that you can keep science really simple. Choose one book. Just choose one book and go from there. I truly hope that you found that helpful. And if I spoke about anything there you would like for me to explain further, or maybe to do a video about, please let me know in the comments below, and I would be more than happy to do so. I'm trying to limit myself here, believe it or not, so that I don't have an hour-long video. But I really do feel passionate and excited when I think of those three categories and how important it is to kindle that curiosity with our kids. I just think the ways that I've talked about are very simple, easy ways to do that in our homeschool that's going to benefit not only us, but our children. Okay, now I'm going to share what piece of curriculum didn't work in our home. And this one I did have like an open and go piece of curriculum. And that is sequential spelling. And I don't think there's anything wrong with this particular curriculum. I just don't think it worked for our family. I heard many people that loved this curriculum, which is why I bought it in the first place. And why I love the idea of it and what appealed to me is how simple it is. Like the concept and how they're teaching, it really builds on the previous lesson, and it's just lists, and it keeps it so simple. Now, another part of how they're teaching kids to spell is they're correcting the work as they go. If you're in a lesson where the child has to spell 10 words, for example, you need to change them right then if they're wrong. And you can do that as a parent, or they even encourage you to get your child to do that. And that is part of the learning process for this program. And that is where the problem lied for us. That self-correcting was horrific for my daughter, and the correcting during as a part of the learning process. My daughter cried almost every time we did the spelling. And I at first thought I could use this as an opportunity to teach her that It's okay. Like, that's why we do learn. We don't know everything. If we did, we wouldn't need to go to school. We wouldn't need to be taught. We wouldn't need to learn anything. We just already know it. I thought when we started this and I was seeing her reaction at the beginning that honestly we could work with that and it would help her in the end. But I don't think it did. It just seemed to get worse. And I am not homeschooling for my kid to cry every day. And honestly, she wasn't learning that way. So that process it might work for your kid. It might even work for her a couple years down the road, but she is not at that place right now. And it was very heartbreaking. And I'm happy that I finally clued in and just decided to stop. Now, I wish I had clued in sooner, to be honest. And honestly, I think another reason why I didn't want to stop was I didn't know where to go from there. And I was already struggling to figure out what was the next step I needed to take or the next resource that I needed to use after we finished Hooked on Phonics. To also have those big questions with spelling just felt very overwhelming. Now we're using All About Spelling. So far, that's okay. We're still on level 1 because they suggested no matter where your child's at, to start at number 1 and move up from there in case they've missed some things for their phonics foundation. That was actually exciting to me because I think it's going to help with some of the segmenting that we need a little bit of help for her reading. And I think All About Spelling is going to help with some of those things. One thing that was a little bit of a shocker when it came for me, All About Spelling, was that because we had to start at the very beginning and I wasn't even really sure where I would start or if we didn't anyway, is that I had to buy level 1, 2, and 3 all together. That was a chunk of change all at once. And yeah, so I think if you started at the beginning, that might not be so daunting, but also because I hadn't purchased a lot of curriculum up to that point, I think it was a lot all at once. And yeah, so I've purchased Math UC and other pieces of curriculum, but I purchased those used and I didn't do it all at once. So anyway, yeah, that's all I could say about that, but I'm really happy that we're doing it. I know this was a bit of a different video, and when we click on the videos and I watch them too, I absolutely love them. Hearing what other people are using in their home, it helps me figure out what's out there for curriculum, but I don't use that type of curriculum in a major way in our home. So I'm hoping this offered you other alternatives if your family is like ours and you're not using all open and go curriculum. But like I said, there's a bunch of other women sharing in this playlist. Definitely make sure you check out that playlist. I just want to do an honorable mention quickly. That is the core knowledge. I'm sure that someone's going to reference that in the collaboration videos, but I wanted to make sure I do reference that. Check that out. They offer free curriculum online. I've used them quite a bit. I'm absolutely love them. I know that after we finish our tree study, we're doing a human body study that my daughter really wants to do. And I just want to say, actually, that reminds me, in terms of interest led, my daughter, a couple years ago, I asked her if she wanted to do a human body study. I had bought all this material from Book Outlet, and her response was, no, gross. She wanted nothing to do with it. Now, when I asked her at Christmas time what she wanted to do for the second half of our school year, that was one of the things she mentioned she wanted to do for science was the human body. And I'm using material both from the core curriculum material, and I'll link their site below. Please check it out. And I also picked up a unit study from Jessica from the Waldock Way. And I think I get a little excited because I might have a little too much curriculum for that topic. I'll let you know. All right, that's everything I'm going to share. I hope I didn't share too much. If you're still watching, I guess it was okay. And if you like this video, please hit like if you want to see more like it. Please hit subscribe, and I will see you soon with another video.